Us have to say and to help us move Alzheimer's disease to the forefront of public health policy. So I'm going to have Sister Dorothea to lead us in the invocation.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we come with thanks and praise for your many gifts to us each day, the gifts of life, love, faith, family, and freedom. As we begin this roundtable lunch with political, medical, community leaders, and one who lives with Alzheimer's disease, we ask your blessing upon them and all who have worked to make this event a reality. Bless all here present, our sponsors, the hosts, and the roundtable participants who will impart insights on the different facets of Alzheimer's disease. May they know the gratitude of those who will hear these presentations. Generous and loving God, we ask a blessing on this food which you have given us. Bless those who have prepared it and the hands that will serve it. Loving God, may we be instruments of peace to others in our fragile and fractured society. And may your peace be in our hearts, in our homes, and in our world, especially in Iraq and throughout the Middle East. To you, God, be the power, the glory, the honor, and praise, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Again, my name is TJ Harvey. I'm the Public Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for the Alzheimer's disease here in Mississippi. I'm going to show you a short video that goes over some of the statistics nationwide. So if you'll give me just a moment, I'm going to get that going, and then we'll have our panelists up here in about 5 minutes.
I'm through. I'm not close. Good afternoon. Can I have everyone's attention? Please. We're just going to quickly say the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you join me?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Don't you love today's technology? You can't find the flag, you pull one up. So I appreciate y'all working with us today. We're getting just slightly a few minutes off, but I think that the next hour will be definitely worth your while. And I appreciate, again, you taking the time out of your afternoon to join us today. We're going to be discussing what is going on a state level and a national level about this devastating disease and about what is going on in our communities, our state, and the nation. Afterwards, I encourage you each to go online and go to alz.org/plan, where you can read more about the National Alzheimer's Plan and what is being done to eradicate this disease in our country. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Greater Jackson Partnership and St. Dominic's for making this event happen today, and at no cost to our guests. We do appreciate that. We appreciate their board. We want to thank St. Dominic's for being here. I know we have a special guest, legislator, Ms. Rita Martinson. And as well as our Alzheimer's board. I don't know if the board members, I think some of them kind of moved around, but most of them are sitting up here, and we couldn't be here today without a hard-working board. Also, is there any other elected officials that came in the door that I might not have seen? Okay. Well, thank you again for our caregivers who are here, our volunteers who are here. We couldn't do this without you. We couldn't do the work without our volunteers. Now I'd like to introduce Elena Robertson. She is going to be our moderator today. She is a community activist and our Alzheimer's ambassador to Senator Wicker, and she's been doing a great job with us. So I'm going to turn things over to her, and we'll get this program started.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. I prefer not to use the microphone. If you do have trouble, just let me know and I'll get your hand. Okay. I'll do it for you. Is that better? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you, TJ, and thank you everyone for being here. The Alzheimer's Association has a very special place in my heart. I lost my dad in April to this horrible disease, and you know when something like that happens and you kind of have some anger, you got to figure out some way to channel it productively. So I've chosen to get involved, and it's a wonderful association. Enjoyed my time getting to know them and getting involved so far. So if you're not very active, I highly recommend it. I think it would be beneficial and rewarding. I have the privilege of moderating today. I did want to remind everyone, if you haven't already silenced your cell phones, we probably already did that out of habit, just in case. And we will start with welcoming our distinguished panel of panelists. Senator Wicker, he serves on the Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's Disease. Ms. Dunn is the Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association, the Mississippi chapter. Mr. Quayle is an advocate for the Alzheimer's Association. He's also living with Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Mosley is the director of the Mind Center at UMMC, and Dr. Wong, got a little out of order there, the Department of Pathology at UMMC. So right now, we'll give them about a 3 to 5 minute period to kind of give an introduction. That won't be any problem for you, will it? And just to kind of explain their role in the fight against Alzheimer's. So, Senator Wicker, we'll begin with you.
I was distinctly told 5 minutes. I didn't hear that 3 to 5. Well, here we are. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. I'm glad we have so much interest. We know part of the problem, and together we know most of the problem. Alzheimer's is one of the costliest ailment in the United States today. We have over 300 million people in the United States. 5 million of us suffer from Alzheimer's. More than 5 million. A new person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's every 68 seconds in the United States. And anybody know how many Mississippians, approximately how many Mississippians are suffering today?
52,000.
Okay, I had 51, so we've had several 68-second periods, and now we're up to 52. And all the more reason for concern. I know the human cost of just as Elena does, of dementia. My mother died 10 years ago with dementia. I'm not certain it was Alzheimer's, and we've had some of the distinction between dementia at large and the specific disease of Alzheimer's. We talked a bit before we came in here about that, but I know the human cost of losing a loved one from dementia. But also, I want to talk to you today in my few moments about the cost in dollars and cents. It's one of the most expensive things we treat at the federal level. Over $200 billion per year just from Medicare and Medicaid, from those two programs, fighting Alzheimer's. If we stay on the same path as we're on today, we'll be spending $1.2 trillion per year by the year 2050. And some people in this room, though I'm not included, will still actually see the year 2050. So what if we had a medical breakthrough that simply delayed the onset of Alzheimer's by 5 years? Didn't cure, but just delayed the onset. We would cut the annual cost to the Treasury, to the economy, to the taxpayers by some 40%, saving $33 billion annually by the year 2020 and $238 billion annually by 2050. Now, I liked what I heard from TJ when he said, we're out to eradicate this disease, and I think that should be our goal. It is my goal as one of your United States senators to develop a cure for this disease, which is costly both in human terms and in dollars and cents. Rather than discussing cures over the past few years in terms of saving money for Medicare and Medicaid, what have we been talking about? We've been talking about beating down the providers. We've been talking about finance and coverage changes, cutting entitlement programs, raising the eligibility age for Medicare, for example, imposing mandates, the SGR for providers and clinics. We've been talking about those sorts of things. We really want to save money big time. We need to shift our debate to curing Alzheimer's, and we could benefit the patient. You know, we talk about to Social Security. You got to be 67 now, pretty much. We'll gradually go up to age 67 to be eligible for full Social Security retirement. People are talking about, well, we need to raise the age of Medicare eligibility to 67 years of age. That would save the federal government $19 billion over 5 years. $19 billion divided by 5 years. Not a whole lot when we're talking about a $500 to $600 billion deficit. By contrast, if we simply delayed the onset of Alzheimer's by 5 years, we could save $33 billion per year. So we need to be talking about that from the dollars and cents aspect. Now, I want to mention one thing that I'm scratching my head looking at and trying to decide how we can put this into law and into words and into policy, and that would be the concept of an X prize for curing Alzheimer's. You know, we've had prizes sponsored by the government before. The Orteig Prize in 1919. Anybody remember what that was about? Of course, no one remembers that year, but it was first non-stop transatlantic flight. Guess who won that? Charles Lindbergh won that prize in 1927. The most high-profile X Prize was the Ansari X Prize in 2004, offered $10 million for the first reusable manned spacecraft. That was won by Spaceship One. This company won the $10 million, but guess what else it did? It generated so much interest that other concerns put in $100 million in research, put that money into the economy to compete for the pursuit of this prize, and we got it, and it was well worth to the economy and to the taxpayers the $10 billion that we paid. So this is an outlandish idea that I'm, again, trying to put into legislation or put into a concept that we can talk about at forums like the one we're having today. Thank you very much for your interest. And I think that's 4 minutes and several seconds. Thank you so much.
Turned it off. Thank you, and I vote for that. Now, Patty, done?
Yeah, thank you guys, everyone for coming out today, and thanks Senator Wicker for sharing his thoughts and some of the facts and figures that kind of bring this disease home to everybody, and how impactful it is on the nation and how impactful it is on Mississippians. But what I'd like to tell you a little bit about today is a little bit about the Alzheimer's Association and some of the things that we do to support those who have been diagnosed with the disease and to help fund some of the research programs that are currently in place, which hopefully Dr. Wong and Dr. Mosley will share with you guys a little bit more. Well, the Alzheimer's Association is the leading, and I'm sorry, I think I'm coming in and out on the microphone. Sorry about that. The Alzheimer's Association is the leading voluntary health organization in Alzheimer's care, support, and research. From a care perspective, we provide support groups, 24/7 helpline, education programs. Across the nation, we provide 20,000 education programs annually. In Mississippi, although we're smaller, we do cover the entire state of Mississippi, but we provide about 150 programs reaching about 15,000 people each and every year. We have 43 support groups all across the state, from the northernmost tip of Mississippi all the way down through the coast. Attendance of between 3,000, 3,500 people each year for those support groups. Additionally, we have a robust research program. Since 1982, the Alzheimer's Association has funded $315 million worth of research programs, 2,200 new investigators into research programs such as the DIAN study, which is the Dominantly Inherited Alzheimer's Network. We put a significant amount of funds into that program to focus on clinical trials. We also have an annual conference, the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, which is a convening opportunity for about 5,000 researchers each and every year to get together and discuss all of the research opportunities and look at the clinical trials from a prevention standpoint to a medication standpoint. It really runs the gamut on the things that are out there that these researchers are looking at. And it provides a significant opportunity for all of them to get together and to look at the challenges of this disease, because it's going to take more than just the government to get this done, and it's going to take more than just the Alzheimer's Association. It's going to take a lot of folks to get this done. Additionally, we focus on research advocacy, and I'll get into a little more details about advocacy. But we try to convene a host of groups and collaborate on things to bring the advocates together to reach out to their senators and their congressmen, such as Senator Wicker, and some of the efforts that Elena puts forth in reaching out and educating our congressional members on the things that they can do to help us eradicate this disease. And on that note, I'll keep mine short.
Thank you. And Mr. Quayle.
My name's Mike Quayle, and I have Alzheimer's. I probably look like it too. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's almost, how long ago, Carrie? 2 years ago, about 2 years ago. And they say I've had it about 4.5 years, 4 years. My family noticed that I wasn't remembering things that we would discuss just around the table or with the grandkids or going somewhere. They would realize that 2 or 3 days later, I didn't even know what they were talking about. We thought it was my doctors, my physicians. I have serious arthritis, so they just thought it was the medication and all that. So we just popped along, and then eventually my daughter noticed, and I noticed, my wife noticed, my body didn't feel right. So we started going to Dr. Randall, who's in this building, neurologist, and Dr. Nowell. And it took them 4 months, 2 and 3 times a week, and I had my MRI scan and all like that. And they confirmed that I had it a year and a half or 2 years ago, that I had Alzheimer's. What it does, it changes your outlook on life. It changed my outlook on life. I've always been an A-plus personality, a go-getter, get out of my way, give me the ball, I want the deal, Just, that's the kind of guy I am, which is not good all the time, by the way. Just ask my wife, she'll tell you. But mentally, I have slowed down. physically I've slowed down. I've not wanted to. I have not tried to. It's just something that has happened. I don't think as quickly as I used to. I'm not as agile as I used to be. My walk, my balance, it affects all of that. My long-term memory, I've lost everything from August of '08 until the 1st of May of this year. I don't remember anything. And in a few more months, my wife says May and June will drop off. That's what the doctors have noticed. It just drops off. But I just take one day at a time. I thank the Lord that I have him on my side. My family is my support group, my wife, my daughter. My neighbors here, Sales Newman and his wife Nancy, my neighbor Wanda, my friends at church. I couldn't make it without Patty and the group at Mississippi Alzheimer's Association. I do a lot of speaking, 4 or 5 engagements a month for Mississippi Alzheimer's Association. But it's really a challenge to live with this. Don't ever feel sorry for us, because I'm just a regular Joe Blow. I just happen to have Alzheimer's. Some people have Parkinson's disease. Some people have cancer. I have Alzheimer's. I know what's coming down the road. The day's coming when I hit the moderate stage when I'm not going to be able to do what I'm doing right now. But I want to do all I can right now to support the research these 2 guys are doing. Listening to them in our luncheon is just unbelievable. The information coming from these guys, and they're going to speak in a minute, and you just won't believe what they can tell you. That just fits right into what the doctors have been telling me. So people like me, just keep us in mind that you struggle with this stuff every day. Some days are really rough. Some days I am so disoriented, I don't know which ends up. But I still manage a store, Montgomery Ace Hardware in Maywood Mart, and I'm still working. I'm 70, but I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to retire. The doctors say don't slow down. I'm scared to death to slow down. Can I tell that joke?
Yeah.
Does anybody in here have Alzheimer's other than me? I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, these 2 girls had Alzheimer's. They weren't blondes. They had Alzheimer's, and they were going to Atlanta to Six Flags. And they finally hit the suburbs of Atlanta. Six Flags, saw the big sign, Six Flags, left. And one of them turned around and said, hell, we might as well turn around and go home. That's my time. Is that all right? Okay, good.
Yeah. First, let me introduce myself. Jun Ming Wang, working in Mississippi Medical Center in the Department of Pathology. Second thing, I'm a new American. So this starting from this year. And yeah. Thank Patty, and also the Alzheimer's Association give me this opportunity to meet all you guys here as a basic researcher who is fighting for a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
We skated on that.
I worked in the Alzheimer's field for more than 10 years. I attend the Alzheimer's Association International Conference every year. The feedback from 2014 of this conference is kind of complex. The good news is that the scientists have made big effort, and big progress has been made for hopes for the early diagnosis, for tracking the progression of the disease, also for the new target for develop a cure for this disease. The bad thing is that we still do not have a final good medicine that can cure this disease. All these clinical trials so far, they are failed at a different stage of testing. So then the heavy duties for us as a basic researcher we want to do is in the future. Standing this point, what I think the first thing we need to find the causal factor. Sorry, my accent. Causal factor, it's the beginning of that factor induce this disease. Okay, so the causal factor that will help us to do the early diagnosis and also set up the target for cure this disease. So I do a little bit of report here. We found a molecule. That molecule is in our animal model. This animal was modeled as Alzheimer's disease. We found a molecule that is reduced at a very early age in their brain. At this age, we still cannot see any beta amyloid, the pathology. So this suggests these things might be a factor. Either it is a causal factor or it is either at least earlier than the beta amyloid appears. So the support from a clinical side is Alzheimer's patient, this molecule in their brain is also lower compared to the healthy controls. So Dr. Mosley and I now developing a project to identify this molecule if this can be used as an early biomarker. And the second point is we need to develop approaches for a cure for this disease. So a cure, what it means, it can change the developing cause of this disease, not just target the phenomena, the symptoms. So we have discovered this molecule. When we give this molecule back to the animal, we can find that the learning and memory performance is improved. So now this molecule has been approved by the National Institute of Health for a clinical trial. The phase 1 clinical trial is in California. We propose to have a site in Mississippi for the second phase clinical trial for determine the efficiency, the therapeutic efficiency of this molecule. So in my lab in UMC, we also found that this molecule may have a benefit for Parkinson's disease. We working on this to determine the best, most effective dosage preclinically and preparing for a clinical trial in Mississippi. So we want to thank the Alzheimer's Association for supporting the research. Your support of my career work, and that has allowed me to experimentally test my hypothesis for this disease, and also fulfill my passion for find a cure for this disease. So, so the Alzheimer's Association is not only support for funding as much as necessary for the caregiving, but also support for the basic research to finding a cure for this disease. That is also, it's the group of us, the goal, we want to find a cure for this disease, eventually to reverse or even prevent of this disease in Mississippi, in also nationally and internationally. Thank you.
I tell Junming that it's great that he's a new American, but his Southern accent needs a little work. We're working on it, though.
Yeah.
So first of all, Patty, thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. I want to tell you just a couple of things about the Mind Center, and very broadly, in 5 minutes or less, it's hard to tell you about all the exciting studies that we're doing, but I'm going to paint it with a very broad brush.
Stand up. Slow down.
I'll try.
Forgive me.
No, no problem. Slow is not in my DNA, I'm afraid, so, but I will try. So first of all, we have been doing some really interesting long-term studies at UMC before we started the Mind Center. A lot of people think I just moved here. I've been here for over 20 years. So, you know, it's like an overnight success kind of thing, right? We, for example, had some of the earliest findings to show that in people who are middle-aged, when you're in your 40s and 50s, that we can identify things that are changing. Now that I'm in my 50s, this is not good news. We can find things that are changing in your brain that we used to think were no big deal. Our studies found that those things start to erode your memory and your other cognitive abilities in your 50s, and that also predicts future decline later in life. Those findings helped us and other scientists come to the conclusion that, in fact, Alzheimer's disease doesn't start when you get symptoms. Alzheimer's disease, the pathology of Alzheimer's, starts years, if not decades, before you start having symptoms, right? That's important when you start thinking about treatments and when you start thinking about how do we prevent this. And that's important when I tell you about what some of our studies are doing, that piece of information about thinking about, quote, midlife. Well, with all this research and success that we were having with funding, we realized that we could be more effective if we put this under a common umbrella, if we had a better strategy, a more targeted and focused strategy in terms of the researchers we were recruiting, the grants and things that we were going after, as opposed to hiring people and each person would kind of come in and do their own thing. They might be successful, they might not be successful. So toward that end, we were thinking, one, we could do something good to accelerate the pace of discovery, that we're already leading the country in several areas and we could strengthen that. And the second thing is we could do something good for Mississippi. When we have big research projects and we're attracting researchers and talent, they move to Mississippi, they raise their families in Mississippi, and we improve Mississippi. So the Mind Center's, you know, that's a secondary thing that's also a benefit that we're doing. In 2010, that came together with a lot of help from people like Ambassador Palmer and people on our board that I see here, and Governor Winter and others. And so that kicked off the Mind Center. The second thing that we're doing, by the way, is I'm going to tell you about research, but the second thing that we're doing is we realized we need to do a better job in terms of clinical care. I can tell you firsthand, having a loved one with this, and I see our good friends from St. Catherine who take great care of her, navigating the healthcare system with a loved one with Alzheimer's is a nightmare. And I'm supposed to know how to do it. I've been doing this for a long time, and it was a nightmare for me. We can do a better job. So we're trying to do a better job of that at UMC. And the second thing that we're trying to do is reach into rural and underserved areas in Mississippi by leveraging our telehealth programs where there are no geriatricians and where nobody wants to fool with the patients in those areas, or where we don't have doctors sufficiently trained to do that. So we're launching that actually this month. I'm looking at our COO back there, Denise Lafferty, who's helping us get that off the ground. So we're excited about that. I'm going to tell you about research, but we're also thinking very strongly about how to improve clinical services and how to reach parts of Mississippi that we currently don't get to. So a couple of minutes or less to tell you about all our big projects is hard to do, but in a nutshell, we're focused in 3 areas. The first has to do with identifying risk factors. If I ask you what are the risk factors for heart disease, you can come up with some things. Cholesterol, smoking, diet, inactivity. If I ask you what are the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, don't get old, right? There's got to be a better alternative than that, right? Why do we care about risk factors? Because if you're over 60 and in this room, there's a good probability you're taking a statin to lower your cholesterol. And the reason that is because studies like the one that we're doing identified that cholesterol and lipids predict heart disease. So drug companies said, wonder if we came up with a drug to lower heart disease, we'd make a lot of money, and people would maybe decrease having heart attacks. So like Jung Ming was pointing out at the Alzheimer's conference, everything we have thrown at this disease has been a bust, okay? We have thrown everything from blueberries to nicotine patches has been a bust. So we've got to have a more effective way of identifying what are the targets for treatment. We have some of the largest studies on risk factors with a lot of big partners, Hopkins, Mayo, Wake Forest, et cetera, but we are leading those studies right here in Mississippi. For the past 25 years, we have followed thousands of people around the U.S. from midlife to older age, and now we've measured everything you can think of on those people, whether it's cholesterol, blood pressure, brain MRIs, memory. And now that that group of people is 70 to 90, we are able to look back to when they were middle aged to see what are the predictors. We just had a big paper in JAMA, just had a press release on it about hypertension. We have a whole ton of big studies coming out. And again, we're thinking about what's going on in midlife that predicts these things. And our studies are really some of the only studies out there that have been running this long that are able to make those links and those associations. The reason we need to know that is because that is the time to start targeting prevention. A treatment that's going to fix it is one thing, preventing it is something else, and I think that's where we're going to end up. The second part that we're focusing on, so first is identifying risk factors, and we have some of the biggest studies in the nation on those. The second has to do with genetics. Anybody that's keeping up with genetics, has been a huge, huge explosion, particularly in the last decade, but changing rapidly every year. Things that we used to look for genetic causes of disease at the level of the gene, okay? Now, you have a lot of DNA in your body. The DNA is the blueprint for what all the cells in your body and your brain, how they function. Genes take up a big chunk of real estate, but there's a lot more to your DNA than just your genes, okay? But we didn't have the technology to go sort of below the level of the gene until recently. Just to give you an example of how far this has come, 15 years ago, to look at the entire genome, all the DNA in a mouse cost $3 billion, 15 years ago. Today, that's called, you hear sequencing, so that's sequencing, right? Today, we can do genetic sequencing on your entire genome in a person for about $5,000. So in 15 years, you talk about a change from $3 billion in a mouse to $5 grand in a human is remarkable. So our studies in that area, just to tell you quickly, to make sense of that amount of data, because there's billions of pieces of information in your DNA, has taken a lot of changes in computing and those kind of things. The other thing it's taken a change is you can't do it with one study. Even though like our study is following, one of them following 16,000 people around the US, you need 50, 60, 80, 100,000 people to really have a reliable finding and to make sense of that data. About 4 years ago, because I've been doing this for a while, started to putting together a consortium of researchers like me that I've known for many, many years, really from around the world. These are people that we typically would compete with for limited dollars at National Institutes of Health, for publication in JAMA and things like that. We have put together really an unprecedented collaboration from these scientists around the world. We've been meeting every 2 weeks for 4 years. We have agreed to share data and share findings to try to address this problem. Not to toot our own horn too much, but at UMC, I chair that. And so, you know, it's right here in Mississippi, little old Mississippi, and we're running this sort of global consortium. So you're about to see a lot more coming from that. So that's pretty exciting. The last thing I'll mention is brain imaging. And again, like genetics, there have been a lot of important advances in imaging. We can study parts of the brain at a level that we couldn't do just a few years ago. And also at UMC, we're doing some of those studies as well in high-powered magnets of MRI and some PET scanning, and those are also exciting because we can actually see pathology that before we couldn't see. When you can see pathology, you can test treatments more quickly. You can decide, instead of waiting 5 years to see if Aricept helps or doesn't help, or well, Aricept's a bad example, but something that actually goes at the pathology, you can put someone in a PET scanner, see if it's having an effect on what the pathology is in a couple of months and say, this doesn't work, let's move on. Let's don't waste 5 years, let's go faster. So those three things are some of our big areas: risk factors, genetics, and imaging. And we're a leader. I want everybody to be proud of this. We're a leader, you know, right here in Mississippi. That's all I got.
think my microphone stopped working. We're blaming it on the battery. Thank you all for that quick introduction, and I'm hopeful just seeing the passion that they have about this topic. We need many more people like them, so I'm interested to see what else they have to say. We have a question portion, which we'll get into now. I'll read the question and we'll go in order, and the first one we'll start with Senator Wicker. Your question is, what made you want to be a champion for Alzheimer's disease, and what was your decision-making process to join the Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's and supporting the Alzheimer's Accountability Act?
Well, I want to, for the same reason I ran for office to start with, I want to, sir, how are you doing? I want you to meet my daddy. There you go. Well, I certainly hope you voted in the Republican primary. If you did, we were glad to have you. And this isn't working either. So, look, I ran for office to help people.
That works.
I got on the health subcommittee in the House the first year. So I've been dealing with this for years. If you want to be part of the debate in terms of lowering healthcare costs and moving research forward, we need to look at Alzheimer's. So this is where the action is. It's the reason I'm glad to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and stand up also. I cannot top that conversation. There's absolutely no way. And you can ask your question now.
Okay. Your question is, how does the Alzheimer's Association move the mission forward through public policy and advocacy initiatives?
Okay, so that's a mouthful. I don't project very loudly. The microphone's not working, so if I'm screaming at the front row, no, that one's, yeah. It just turned off? Okay. Well, let me just lower this. The Alzheimer's Association approaches public policy and advocacy from a federal and a state perspective. We advocated for the passage of something called the National Alzheimer's Project Act, which the president signed into law back in 2011. It was the first time that there was a nationwide strategic plan to address the issues surrounding Alzheimer's disease, address the patients who are suffering from it, address the caregivers who are caring for those who are suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and to focus on coordinated care and particularly on research. So in 2012, the first National Alzheimer's Plan came to be. And they're consistently meeting on a quarterly basis to look at the plan and see how we implement the plan. But what it did was it brought together offices across lines, so to speak. So the Department of Health and Human Services, the Departments of Health, all kinds of collaborative parties came together to come up with this nationwide plan to try and figure out what are we going to do about Alzheimer's disease. And one of the initiatives that it focused on was research. And one of the focuses of that was, okay, how are we going to effectively prevent and cure Alzheimer's disease? And so they put a task out there for the NIH, for the scientists to come up with a way by 2025 to do just that. So stemming from that, we've asked over the years for additional funding for Alzheimer's research. When you look at other diseases such as cancer and heart disease, we've seen that if you give the scientists the resources that they need, if you give them the funding, upwards of billions of dollars, that the trajectory of those diseases comes down. And so what we have been pushing for, through our federal congressmen, is we need to put that kind of funding into Alzheimer's disease. So we've put billions into cancers, and we've seen what the scientists can do. They've had so many successes, and we're really pleased. And if we put that kind of effort into Alzheimer's disease, then we can see that decline. But instead, Alzheimer's disease has grown, and the prevalence of it has grown. So each and every year, we've asked for some additional funding for Alzheimer's research, and back in 2014, we got an additional $100 million. Congress approved that for the budget, and we were exceptionally excited about that. But that's just a start. That's just a drop in the bucket for us. So we've gone back and we've asked for some additional funding for the 2015 budget. This time we're going back and we're asking for $200 million. But in addition to that, and thanks to the support of Senator Wicker, we came up with the Alzheimer's Accountability Act. And what the Alzheimer's Accountability Act does is it says, okay, NIH and scientists, what we want you to do is put together an annual budget. And what we want this annual budget to do is to tell Congress and to tell the President, this is what we need for research funding to effectively prevent and treat Alzheimer's disease. And thank you to Senator Wicker for being one of the co-sponsors for that piece of legislation. And I know I'm going to go over my time limit on this one, but I wanted to say just a few things on the state level. You know, we focus a lot on the state level as well. We've been successful in putting together an Adult Guardianship Jurisdiction Act that the governor signed back on July the 1st. We were very excited about that piece of legislation. And we've also partnered with the Department of Mental Health, the Division of Alzheimer's. I think Kathy Van Cleve is in here somewhere. Thank you, Kathy. And the Mind Center with Denise Lafferty to put together our very first state strategic plan on Alzheimer's disease, a very collaborative effort to look at what can the state of Mississippi do to support the people who are living with this disease and to support the caregivers, and look at what we can do from a research perspective to continue to support the Mind Center and the efforts of Dr. Mosley and Dr. Wong. Thank you.
Mr. Quell, you touched a little bit on it in your introduction, but would you tell us a little bit more about the diagnostic procedure, the process, what you went through, maybe some early signs or symptoms, and how you partner specifically with the Alzheimer's Association as an advocate?
Like I told you earlier, my family noticed what was going on with me. I did not know. I had no idea that I was not remembering things. So it was a long process, evidently over a period of time. The Alzheimer's Association, after I was confirmed that I had Alzheimer's, I looked in the phone book and looked up their phone number and went up to the office up in Ridgeland and went inside and I met Sarah Murphy, who's in Macomb today running a program. And she said, may I help you? And I said, yeah, I want to see all the material that you have on Alzheimer's. I want to read as much as I can about it. And she said, where are you a caregiver? And I said, no, ma'am, I have it. And so that just kind of led to where they use me now 4, 5, 6 times. And I don't mind being, I love this. I love being able to try to help raise money or whatever it takes to get the word out, to get the money for these guys to help people like me, because I never dreamed in my life I'd have anything like this. It just comes out of the wild blue and whammo. And gee whiz, you know, I have trouble sometimes getting home from the office. I can be driving and don't even know where in the heck I am. And you know, I'm just an average looking guy. I'm kind of ugly, but I'm just an average Joe Blow fella. But this is what happens to people that have Alzheimer's. You have trouble tying your shoes. It's weird. But anyway, a lot of other stuff, but I'm not going to bother you with that. But the Alzheimer's Association, Patty and TJ, Sarah, Rachel, and the others there, they are my spine and my joints, and my wife, my daughter, my grandchildren, my son, my friends, my family, my church people. If it wasn't for them just understanding what's going on, it'd be hard to do. And I don't want to beat any drums, but if it wasn't for the Lord, I'd never make it. If I didn't have faith and trust in Christ as my Savior, you could just throw this away. I'd have blown my brains out a long time ago. Because what you do is, I had a lady the other day ask me, well, how do you handle the fear? Well, I'm telling you the Lord's truth, I don't have any fear. If you think about it, you do get scared. Because I know what's coming. I know what's coming. One of my dearest friends died with Alzheimer's. And he was a happy-go-lucky guy like I, but it just changed him to a pain in the you-know-what. Well, I've asked the Lord, if it's going to change me that way, I want him to take me home first. I don't want to be a burden to my family. So the support comes from your family, your friends, the Alzheimer's. The diagnosis, my doctors are so good to me, Dr. Randall, Dr. Nowell, Dr. Russell, Dr. Gandy. These guys are just fantastic men that are busy doctors, but they take their time and explain to you what's going on. And that's pretty darn good when a doctor that's seeing 70 people a day takes his time to spend a little time with you as an individual, just some guy off the street, to tell you what's going on and to help you. So that's how all of that rolled together in a ball of wax has helped me. And you got to have a little sense of humor with this stuff. And you can't let it bother you. You know, don't lose any sleep over it. And that's basically it.
And we love your sense of humor.
Good.
Dr. Wong,
Is that okay?
move along with you. Your question is, what was your experience at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Copenhagen? And what are your thoughts about the direction of national research and how funding for the Alzheimer's has helped in your research?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for. Let me start first before answer your questions. So some of the questions I have already answered. Some will start first. As a new American, what I want to see, we started this journey to be an American 11 years ago, starting with my wife. My wife, he eventually did not reach this. Last year he died. So before he have this American certification. So it's a long way, but I'm approved for this. So for your question, the Copenhagen, it's this year's meeting, as what I said, we have saw a lot of progress in the field. Some of the progress in the field is that because Alzheimer's, it's not only it's not a simple disease. It's a contribution from many factors. As Dr. Mosley said, we have to identify the risk factors. Some risk factor may from some other major disease like cardiovascular disease. So like other diseases. So the control or the whole level of the health treatment will improve also the Alzheimer's disease. But for Alzheimer's disease, it has its specific point because it's in the brain. We cannot see it. Other things we can easily to open and to do a surgery, but brain, you can do surgery, but it's very limited. The brain, so for the Alzheimer's disease, we thinking that is a dementia. So why we have this dementia, we already know that is a neurodegeneration. The neurodegeneration, why we have the neurodegeneration? Because the neuron, after so many years working, they get tired. Okay? So some of the new neurons, but the good news is, we now find our brain, the neurons, it's not just the neuron that when a baby was born. It's renewing. But it's slowing, we cannot see it. We can see our skin is renewed, our hair is renewed, our nails renewed, but we cannot see the brain is renewed. But in fact, it's renewed. Why we have the Alzheimer's disease? From the basic research scientist point, we're thinking that is the renewing of these new neurons is slowed down or eventually stopped. Why we have this? Because from our study, we see that in the animal have this model, we see the early neurogenesis impairments. And we also see the mouse, they have the learning memory deficits. So when we try to promote these mice to produce new neurons to get at the normal level. And then these mice, their cognitive performance is improved. That is support us. So in fact, we're thinking as what now from the Copenhagen meeting, it is we want to find also the causal factors, the risk factors by a screen. We also need that from the animal study to provide our leading points where we should go. So these are the things that I get from the meeting, also continue in combination with our study. So I got the support from Alzheimer's Research Association for starting from 2005, when I get another one in 2009. So this support helped me, help our group to focus on what we are doing. We have the hypothesis. How we can get this hypothesis tested? We need the support that the Alzheimer's Association give us these opportunities. And also we need all you support this association to find a cure for these disease.
Good.
Thank you.
How would the Alzheimer's Accountability Act and $200 million increase in federal funding research help the National Institute of Health and affect Mississippi and the Mind Center?
Well, first of all, that sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, and that's a good thing, and we're grateful for the Alzheimer's Association and Senator Wicker and others who have made this happen. Will the Mind Center find a way to carve off some of those funds to continue our research? Absolutely. We've been very successful. NIH grants are tough to get. We're competing, again, with Hopkins and Mayo and a lot of other big places, but you know, just because you work at Mayo Clinic doesn't mean you have a monopoly on good ideas. And I think we've proven that, not to knock any of my friends at the Mayo Clinic. But I think the other part of that, and to sort of amplify something that Patty said, you know, the National Alzheimer's Project Act is an important first step. It's a blueprint. How do we coordinate services? You know, if you're trying to get somewhere, you have to have a roadmap of how you're going to get there, or how do you know that you're there. So that is so important. But it is going to take sustained resources to make this thing work. We know the price of inaction. It's too high. There are too many people coming down the pipeline that are going to have this disease. It's not just pain and suffering for families, as Senator Wicker said, it's cold economics. We can't afford it. Just to sort of put, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but just to put it in perspective, you know, anytime we have invested in research in this country, we have seen huge gains.
Right.
Over the past 20 years, heart disease rates, look at a chart, they're coming down. Stroke, coming down. Childhood cancers, survivable if not wiped out in certain cases. AIDS, Magic Johnson was diagnosed in 1991. Have you seen him lately? He looks great. So, but you have to think about the resources that have gone into those diseases relative to Alzheimer's. The National Institutes of Health is the biggest funder of research worldwide. If you go to school to become a scientist and you decide what field you're going to go into, those are the dollars that are going to support your career. And those are the dollars that influence people of what career you're going to go into. If you realize there's no dollars in this coming out of graduate school or medical school, why would you study it, right? Yearly budgets, just to put it in perspective. The annual budget for heart disease, $4 billion. Annual budget for cancer, $6 billion. Budget for AIDS, $3 billion. Budget for Alzheimer's disease, $450–500 million. That's huge. That's a huge difference. Do I believe we can come up with a way to fix this? Absolutely. I've never been more optimistic. With new technologies, with bright scientists, and with support, we can do it. But like I said, it is going to take sustained resources, not in one single year, but over a long period of time to make this work.
So we're all going to pull out our checkbooks. Solve it right
Credit
now.
card.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today for the question portion. I wish we had more time because, as you can tell, there's so much good information out there, and really just kind of getting the word out and getting people educated and involved is priority one. So I will turn it back over to TJ.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you all for your attention today. If you're like me, it was a plethora, an overwhelming amount of information. So let's give our panelists a round of applause.